What's up mga paps? In this video, we're going to get into Visayan folklore and talk about a very popular mythological creature called the Aswang. I'm going to discuss why Ilonggos are very much into this and ultimately bust the myth of the Aswangs and the Capiz connection. Although Capiznoons are categorically different, they are closely related to the Ilonggos of Iloilo. Not only because of the geography, since Iloilo and Capiz are neighbors, but also because of their similar dialects, as they share a lot of common words. Nowadays, there are many Capiznoons living in Iloilo and vice versa. So, in a way, talking about Aswang is in general an Ilonggo thing. But why Capiz? Surely, Aswang is a nationwide belief. Luzon and Mindanao also have rich Aswang folklore. In Iloilo, Dumangas and Dueñas are often singled out. But in the Philippines, when people talk about Aswang, more often than not, Capiz will be the center of attention. The term Aswang was already used as far back as the pre-Spanish era. There's already a folk story or a legend in the Visayas, specifically the Bicol region, about two quarreling gods named Gugurang and Aswang. In a nutshell, this is your typical good versus evil, light versus dark story, where Gugurang symbolizes light and good, while Aswang symbolizes dark and evil. Even back then, in ancient Philippines, pagans were already using the term Aswang to denote bad things, such as when people suffer from series of unfortunate events or get lingering incurable illnesses. They were considered to be cursed by Aswang. This was the dominating belief of the Visayan society back then. Gugurang as the good god and Aswang as the punishing evil god. You see, back in the times, Spanish settlement were faced by fierce opposition from natives, particularly from natives that oppose Christian conversion. The Babaylans, women that are considered religious leaders or high priestesses of the pagan belief of Gugurang and Aswang, despise Spain's religious campaign of converting natives into Catholicism. Opposition forces were mostly led by Babaylans, and a lot of the units were women who fought Spaniards in a guerrilla style and often attack or assemble at night. Obviously, the reason for this tactic was their lack of numbers and strength. Babaylans were influential and would often pick a fight, figuratively and literally, against Spanish friars. This had become a constant thing during those times. However, eventually Spanish propaganda won. They were clever enough to use local folklore to their own advantage. They realized that native people still believe in pagan gods like Aswang. They propagandized that the opposition were Aswangs, even exaggerating their night activities and manufacturing stories putting Babaylans and other female warriors into bad light. Slowly but shrewdly, the public was convinced that Babaylans and her followers were Aswangs. The propaganda had proven to be very effective as natives turned against their own in various ways and degree. This happened all throughout the Philippines, but historical studies suggest that such accounts were more prevalent in the Visayas region. Time passed by and this Aswang mentality stuck. Culturally, parents would often use threats of Aswangs as deterrent to discourage their children from doing something or going somewhere. Like, don't go out at night, Aswangs might get you, or don't go to that house, an Aswang lives there. That kind of parenting trick was standard practice in the province all throughout the American and Japanese era, even up until now. Okay, we now get that hundreds of years of folklore fueled by heavy propaganda shaped Visayas as a hotbed of aswangs. But this still doesn't answer why Capiz became synonymous with aswang headquarters. There is this genetic neurological disease called XDP, shortcut for X-linked dystonia Parkinsonism. Sufferers of this condition have involuntary tremors and make uncontrollable twisting movements, thus the term lubag. A person with an XDP episode would seem to be transforming into something else. Over time, aswangs were characterized by man transforming into a vicious creature or into an animal. A gullible person with a predisposed belief in aswangs would easily regard the tremors and seemingly painful twisting motions of an XDP episode as an aswang transformation. XDP is a rare condition, but interestingly enough, XDP is endemic in Panay and occurs much more frequently among Capiznons. The mutated gene causing XDP was probably introduced in Capiz or Panay over 2,000 years, and since it is genetically passed down from generation to generation, Capiznons unfortunately became huge carriers of the gene. XDP symptoms usually manifest later in life, around mid-30s to 40s. Affected Capiznons would just have a sudden tremor attack. Many of these cases probably happened in other places. Say for example in Manila, an affected individual would suddenly have these attacks, and when people track his roots, it would be found out that the individual is from Capiz. This would happen again, and people would realize that the sufferer is another Capiznon. Imagine that this had been happening over and over for a couple of centuries. As more and more of these things happen, public opinion of aswangs and Capiz as their home has been reinforced over and over again. Lack of medical explanation had not helped mitigate the wrong belief either. Soon, the unwitting public would just accept the notion that aswangs are real and they are from Capiz. In conclusion, aswangs are from folklore and legends. The belief in their existence is reinforced by various collective circumstances in history. Capiz, being known as home of aswangs, is a result of a misunderstood genetic disorder, which is unfortunately endemic to Capiznons. Folklore and mythology are great. They are part of history and culture. I have nothing against the diwatas, kapres, lamang, and aswangs. They are fun topics, but always let common sense prevail.